We are live. Laura is trying to figure out her hoodie situation.
Hey.
You guys take it home. Okay, thank you for joining us for our third day of Grounded. We're going to be discussing hoodies and purple hoodies today. No, today we have, yeah, velvet. So we're going to be talking about yoga today, the benefits of yoga for stress, how to get into yoga if you're not a yogi, poses for balancing your chakras and your fear centers. So you might want to get your yoga mat out. So we're going to be doing a meditation for chakra balancing. So all those benefits and juicy things to talk about today. So hi, Laura, how are you?
Hi, Lauren, I'm well.
Hey,
how are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm still really in awe of your hoodie. It's really nice.
So. Yeah, it's a nice color that pops. It really goes with the, pops on the camera.
I'm a fan of purple. So the first thing I ask in Grounded, I like to just start off with the elephant in the room, which is a pandemic. How do you feel? What's your biggest truth of this situation right now? What you're observing from other people and what you're observing from yourself?
Yeah, I have been actually enjoying the downtime quite a bit. I'm doing things I never really get to do, projects I've been putting on the back burner, and lots of cooking and things like that. But I do have my moments where, I kind of long for the time before, right? Our normal before. And I try to get out every day and exercise. And there is a place close to where I live in Manhattan that it's like a little cafe and grocery store. So the cafe's still open for some hours, and I get like a matcha, so it feels like I'm doing something kind of normal. But at the same time, I do feel like I guess I have a lot of mixed feelings. I feel like, grateful for the downtime and the time to rest. But at the same time, I also wish there was a happy medium between a complete shutdown and being able to do the things that, we used to be able to do and kind of took for granted,
Yeah, that totally makes a lot of sense. Yes, I feel like the main thing I pull away from this time is the feelings of conflict. It's like, oh, I'm okay here right now, but feeling guilty about everything else that's going on. So having to sit in between those two is like where we really find ourselves. So in experiencing two different truths at the same time. So yeah.
Right. And that in between, in that place of uncertainty. And I think, if you're not used to dealing with uncertainty, I think it can be a really, really scary time for people, because if you're used to having things a certain way, then this uncertainty and really that's the biggest question mark. We don't know how long this is going to go on. We don't know when our normal is going to come back,
right? Essentially.
And so I just, from the nature of my work and the things that I've pursued, I've had a life full of uncertainty. So I'm just a little bit like, well, this is kind of like my normal in a way. But I do understand that most people have a difficult time with uncertainty. And when I teach, I do teach people how to deal with that and the fear that comes with that, and how to still feel balanced, even in the unknown.
Right. Do you have anything specific that you do? I mean, we're going to get more into this, but specific that you do to cope with that uncertainty right now in the pandemic?
I mean, my meditation practice, my yoga practice, I mean, the things that I teach are also the things that I practice. And so that's why I stand behind them so strongly, because I know that they've worked for me, and I know that they can work for everyone.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. Yeah. It really is about I think those things put you in the state of the observer, where you become more comfortable with the uncertainty if you're watching it, because you're watching it from a safe place almost. So yeah, I think those have been a really big practice for me as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, essentially, you're talking about the observer, just to sort of bring people up to speed on what that means in terms of yogic terms. Like, we talk about the body, the mind, and the spirit, and the body and the mind are part of what we call prakriti, or our nature, and this is the changeable part of us. And we can see this with our bodies aging. Things change, we see that, right? But we don't pay as much attention to the mind. We think the mind is more set in stone. I mean, we can always learn something, but just by our own mental patterns, we think, well, this is just who I am. But essentially, the mind can also change all the time, just like the body. And so one of the gifts of meditation and yoga is to learn to observe that changeable nature in the body and the mind. And then the third part is the spirit, which is the non-changing part of us. So this is called the Purusha, or the true self. And this is the part of us that when we're really quiet in the body and the mind, we start to feel these little moments of inspiration and deeper insight. Mm-hmm. So just like you were saying, kind of observing, well, who is observing? The observer, which is the true self.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I think something we were talking about the other day is that, you know, when we do these practices, we realize the impermanence of everything, especially emotion and thought, and mm-hmm. having to determine between the nuance of your emotions in this time. Like, is this your emotions are, you know, directional? They're signal. They're leading you to a certain place. You want to be able to trust them. So, you know, coming at it, even though they're changeable, and they might not always be, they might be informed by our thoughts or our state, or, you know, some, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Well, yeah, the emotions, I like to compare them to like the weather. A lot of times when we get upset, when we have uncomfortable, difficult emotions, we think, oh no, this is never going to end, right? There are thousands of breakup songs about this. I'm never going to get over this person. I'm never going to feel that kind of feeling again, or love. And ultimately, what we do know is that those feelings do pass. There might be a part of us that is forever with somebody else, and that relationship ends, and then it changes. But we do know that we are also adaptable creatures, and that we're not going to be stuck in that place of sadness or loss or difficulty forever. And so it's sort of like when you feel very strong emotions coming, it's like a huge storm coming your way, and it's like, okay, we have to like get ready for the storm, right? Make sure that we're safe, and then when it's over, let it pass, and then the sun comes out again, and you know, it's different. So emotions are just like thoughts and emotions. The mind and the emotional world are very much connected. And so this changeable nature, again, like I was saying, like it's like the weather changing moment to moment. And if you can be in that place of observation, being from that place of the true self, and I'm just observing, like, I'm sad right now. Okay, follow the through line of that emotion. I mean, scientifically speaking, our emotions are a cocktail of hormones that are being released into the bloodstream for a specific effect. And if we allow ourselves to feel them for 90 seconds, that's how long it takes for those hormones to go through the bloodstream. But unfortunately, what happens many times, because we're taught to not be comfortable with our emotions, don't cry, stop acting like that, stop, you know, being like that. We hold it in, and then it traps itself in the body as tension, or it traps itself in the mind as memory. And so when we think of that memory again, we get emotional again, and it just becomes this like unending cycle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I also have read recently that there is an addictive nature to some of your emotions. If you are addicted to feeling fear or anxiety or whatever those emotions are, your brain actually creates more receptors to receive those chemicals from those emotions. You get addicted to them. And then you
Right.
start looking for them and you start filling in the blanks. And so that's why it does seem forever, because we keep craving these things and we don't even realize how we're resubscribing to this, over and over and over. So.
Right, right. But the same can be said for, the positive emotions, that when you realize the power that you have to create your mindset, that is, I mean, that's everything. And when you are able to observe and be in this place of, instead of going into the emotion and the story of whatever's coming up for you, but instead just observing it, like, oh, here I am. I'm sad about this because this happened when I was 7 years old. And if you follow it through and then get to the other side of it, you can let it go. And it doesn't have to have such a strong hold on you. And you don't have to stay addicted to it. Just like any addiction, you can make a new path and come to a place of more peace and balance.
Yeah, that's very true. Something I like to, whenever people are doing, affirmations or anything, I like to always view it from this standpoint too, is that we actually have a point in the brain where if you're setting intentions and you're setting your intentions, I want to see this today, your brain will actually filter out those things that it wants to see, whatever you set the intention to. So it's like, oh, you want to look for that? I'll try to find it for you. So it's a choice to sometimes be like, I want to cultivate this positivity. I want to make more connections there. So, and to alleviate this fear. So.
Yeah. And I also want to touch on this because I know we've talked about this before. Like, sometimes we don't have this, I mean, obviously we don't have the same bodies, right? We don't have the same minds. We have things that we've inherited also from our ancestors. Sometimes people do have a predisposition because of what their ancestors went through to depression or anxiety. We do know that. That's, this is a fairly new science called epigenetics, but it talks about the different things that we can inherit from our family. And so, yeah, it might be harder for you if you do have that predisposition to change the pattern because it's more ingrained in you, because it's in your body and in your mind. It's wired in you, but it doesn't mean that you can't change it.
Right. Yeah. That idea is basically, even though it is wired in your DNA, you can turn on and off elements of your DNA by the way, you're thinking or you're eating. So it's really important to look at that. It's not just like, oh, I was born this way, everything's lost. You do still have a choice.
Right. Right. And also what's really amazing to me about that is that what you do actually also affects the next 7 generations. So you have the power and the ability to really help set up if you decide to have children, to help set up your further ancestry for success.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I wanted to bring this back around. Like you were talking about the release of these emotions and how important that is. So I wanted to discuss this in terms of yoga, for people who are looking to kind of have a more emotional release with yoga. For somebody who's just starting out, what would your recommendations be to somebody who's just starting out? And yeah,
for poses, you mean, or
just for if people are. I know people tell themselves stories about, they're not flexible, they're not spiritual, that kind of thing. I think yoga is for everyone, because I really view it as another source of meditation. And how does yoga really serve in that way to provide us with like a healthy mindset and to release those emotions?
Well, going back to what I said before about the body, the mind, and the spirit, we know that even if you're not a spiritual person, like I also like to look at this from a scientific perspective. We do have an electromagnetic field of energy in our bodies when we're alive. We know this, right? We know this from science. We know this even just from observing the heart. The heartbeat, it pumps because it has an electromagnetic charge. the electricity pushes the blood away from the heart to feed all of our cells, and the magnetic charge pulls the blood back so that it can be reused. It's fascinating. If you think about it, the body is really such an amazing mechanism, you know. So what I would recommend, I mean, it's so funny that you said that, because so many people say to me all the time, like, oh, well, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. I'm like, that's like maybe the biggest excuse I've ever heard. And and then I usually respond, well, that's why you do yoga. Because like, that's like saying like, well, I've never ridden a bike before, so
Yeah, exactly.
oh, well, I can't do it. You know, it's like, well, sometimes sometimes you have a natural knack for things. People might have, you know, their own strength. So some poses might be easier for them, the ones that require a little bit more strength. Some people have more flexibility, so it might be easier for them to get into these different shapes. But the type of yoga that I teach really is trying to teach to where somebody is in their body right now, and then meeting people where they are, and using the practice to help build from that place. So there are a lot of different postures, I mean, that you can start with, but like I would recommend even just, you know, lying on your back and having your hands on your chest and your belly, and just focusing on your breathing, because even just being in stillness for a few moments, we know can start to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, our relaxation response. This slows down the heart rate, and then this brings the whole body into a state of homeostasis or balance. And the more that we bring ourselves into that place of balance, the easier it becomes to go back to that place of balance, because we were talking about earlier about how to get to a new normal, especially if you don't feel balanced, if you don't feel peaceful, if you have anxiety, if you tend toward depression or something else. Coming back to setting that bar to a new place of balance makes it easier to go back there again and again and again.
Yeah, and I like that too. I actually think I got more into yoga before I got into meditation, because it's really, I mean, well, right now this isn't an option, but it brought me to a place where there was nothing else going on. So I had to focus on my breath. And I think it makes the idea behind Vinyasa is one of those before.
Vinyasa, moving with the breath. Yeah.
Yes, is moving with the breath. You're really focusing on your breath during each movement. And people make the same argument for meditation that we've just made for yoga. It's like, oh, I'm not flexible, I can't do yoga. I can't quiet my mind, I can't do meditation. It's like, these are all practices to eventually build and to quiet your mind. And eventually they're all very balancing. So I think even I like to, you know, if you have trouble with meditation, I think this is a great like moving meditation. It's a practice where you don't have to really focus on sitting still, but your one breath, one movement is a really great way to break down your breath. So.
Right. And what's amazing too for me is that might also change what you need over time, and then you can just adjust the practice. And I want to go back to what I was saying before about the electromagnetic field, and that's you know, the energy in your body. When you're doing these postures, you're also moving the energy in your body. So the belief in yoga is that when we breathe, we draw life force energy into our bodies, prana, we call it. Other schools of thought call it chi or ki. And when you're moving with your breath, you're aligning your physical body with your energetic body and your mental system. Many times we start with the physical poses in yoga because the body is the most accessible part of us, right? It's the densest part of who we are. We can touch, we can feel, we can move our bodies. The body is exercised through movement. Then when the body is more balanced, then we can start to go into the more subtle aspects of our being, the mind. So the mind is exercised through stillness. So that's where the meditation comes in, and the pranayama, the breathing techniques. And then when the body and the mind are still, then we start to feel this inspiration that comes from the spirit. And it's not just about surviving. It's not just about being alive, but we're meant to thrive. We're meant to be enjoying this life. We're meant to be doing the things that we love to do. We're meant to feel inspired and to feel connected to what we're doing and to who we're in contact with. And so this practice, starting with the body, moving into the mind, then moving into the spirit, that helps us to live our lives with more fullness and joy and peace and balance.
Exactly. So yeah, I really like the idea of using yoga to process their emotions. I've had several instances where I'd be in a class, and especially they say most of your emotions kind of will get stored in your hips, or a lot of them. So doing a lot of releasing of your hips, I'll be like, I'll start crying in some ways, because there's certain things I'm like, I didn't even know that I was dealing with this at the moment, and this is somebody, I'm somebody who, not coming from a spiritual background at all, and this didn't really make sense to me, and just having it, really just having that just show up for me, like, what is happening? It's interesting. So do you have, we're going to get more into this later, but why do you think these emotions get trapped in certain places in our body? And
well, I think part of it is like what I said before, where we do live in a culture that doesn't celebrate vulnerability so much, and we're taught to not feel, because I think it makes other people feel uncomfortable. I'm actually a very emotional person, and I remember even as a child, people saying, "Stop crying, why are you so emotional?" And I remember not being uncomfortable with how I was feeling, but realizing that other people were uncomfortable, so they were telling me to stop, right? So I think when we are told that enough, then it gets trapped in our bodies and our minds. So it gets trapped in our bodies as tension, and we start holding in different places. People have different places of tension. Like, some people have said to me, well, oh, my hamstrings are tight. And I'm like, well, that's just where you're tight. It doesn't mean that, or that's where you hold your tension. It doesn't mean that it has to stay that way. It just means, like I was saying before, that's where we start. And then what can happen when you start to go into those places of tension, you might get emotional, because that emotion that has been trapped there is finally being released. And a lot of our tension too, this is something that I think is misunderstood, that a lot of our tension is not even in our muscles, but it's in our connective tissue. So it's in our fascia, and the fascia is like this sort of like a nylon stocking that connects everything together in our bodies, and even in our joints and our ligaments. Like, there's tension there. We can't stretch as much as in a muscle, right? But we can still stretch in the connective tissue and release that chronic tension, essentially, that is usually caused by emotion.
Okay, so now we talked a little about, or I'm not sure if we touched on this, chakras, and how basically each chakra is kind of aligned to different parts of our body. And right now, can you talk a little about the chakras, and especially the base chakra, which is really an issue for people right now, probably with feeling safety? Can you go into that?
Yeah, I think we should talk about what a chakra is.
Yes, please.
Some people say, so Lauren just said chakra. I say chakra. So there's even different ways of saying it. But the chakras, they're really essentially the anatomy of the energetic or the spirit body. And chakra means wheel or center. So these are the energetic centers in our bodies that oversee different aspects of our living. We have the 7 main chakras. They line up along the spine from the base of the pelvis all the way up through the top of the head. There are also chakras that are above the head and below the feet in what's called the auric field, or the energetic field that surrounds the body. And then in all of our joints are these other little sub chakras. So we're really only going to talk about the main 7 because those are the ones that people usually talk about. And that's, I just wanted to give everybody kind of a base of what that means. In between the chakras also run the nadis, or the energetic channels, of which we have over 72,000. And so if you think about it, it's like a network, just like nerves or veins or arteries in the physical body. These nadis are an energetic network that connects all of our chakras together and weaves through our energetic field. I know you and I talked about before, well, what is this pandemic kind of in terms of the chakras? What is this pandemic bringing up for people? And I think essentially it's a lot of the first chakra, which has to do with our basic needs, our sense of safety, our food, shelter, clothing, our connection and our relationship to our bodies. So when we're feeling threatened, essentially, because this is a virus we don't really know a lot about. Some people seem to be okay and have no symptoms or mild symptoms. Other people have very severe symptoms and can sometimes die from it. So our sense of safety is located in this chakra. And physically, this chakra, Muladhara, it's called root center, root chakra. It's located in our feet, our legs, and the base of the pelvis. And this also has to do with our relationship to our families and our ancestry, and our finances as well. So that's another thing that I know a lot of people are concerned with at this time, because, well, in New York anyway, many people can't work because everything's shut down. And so there's that element to this. And so when we do different physical poses in yoga, and when we do specific meditations, we can balance the chakras. And in this case, we can balance the root chakra so that we can stabilize our base. And just like a strong foundation of a building, we have that strong base, and then we can build upon that with the other aspects of our living. But the thing about the first chakra is that if we don't have this strong base, or we feel unsettled here, everything else goes out of balance too. Mm. So this is a big one. We're essentially having to rebuild our foundation. And I do find, like I said before at the beginning, I have mixed feelings about it. You know, there is that fear about, well, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? But then there's also within that, there inevitably will be some kind of change that will happen, I think, globally. And I think that this is also a chance for us to rebuild our foundation in a more positive and even sustainable way for the planet.
Great. So how do the chakras align? Like if you have a couple unbalanced, what does that really mean for you?
It means that part of that aspect of your living, say you constantly have financial issues, that means that part of your first chakra is out of balance. Or maybe you have a hard time with relationships with your family. That means your first chakra is out of balance. And so how can you rebalance that? Well, there are different poses you can do to help you feel more grounded. And then as your body becomes more balanced, just like I said before, your body becomes more balanced, the body becomes free from tension and imbalances. The mind, you can focus then on the mind. You can start to rewire your mind to change those parts of your mind perhaps that are out of balance with the first chakra. And then you can be connected to the spirit, which is where the healing also happens. I forgot to mention that before. The spirit, the energetic body, is where we can access our what's the word, infinite potential in terms of healing ourselves and helping other people heal.
That's really good to know that there was, something, if we could see something out of balance, there are certain areas we can work on and, just kind of reset that. And there's a really like a lot of visualization we can do to try to put that back into, where it's supposed to be. So, with that, I wanted to see, we had a chakra balancing meditation I wanted to get into today. So are you able to lead us through that?
Yeah, I'd love to share some poses first with you guys. If people want to do it with me, it's going to be really simple. It's fine if you don't, but you can maybe you could write it down and something you could come to later. I also have been teaching online classes, so people are welcome to join that as well, and we can talk about that at the end. But so just a few, I'm going to move my camera to my yoga mat. So one of the, and you guys have probably heard of this before, one of the more basic postures is called, sorry, just make sure you guys can see. Can you guys see my mat? Yeah?
Yeah, we can see that. Yeah.
Okay. One of the more basic postures is called a tree pose or Vrikshasana. This is the Sanskrit word for tree pose. So Vrik, tree, asana, pose. You'll stand on a mat or it's better to come to a hard surface like a wood floor. You can also have one hand on the wall. You'll bend your right knee and point the right knee out. You can place your right foot on your ankle or calf, or you can take it higher to your thigh. Any of those variations are perfect. It's not about height. It's not about range. It's about form. So really it's about where you can hold it comfortably. And you're balancing on the left foot. Then you can take your hands to the heart and balance here. You can keep one hand on the wall if you need to. But if you feel okay from here, you can lift the arms up and out. And you're balancing there on your left foot. You might even see me kind of moving a little bit. This strengthens the ankles. And it also starts to wake up the meridians and the nerves in our feet. So if you remember, I talked about the first chakra is located physically in the physical body. The feet, the toes, the legs, and the base of the pelvis. So whenever we're working in this area of the body, we can start to balance the first chakra. And then take your hands to the heart, lift the knee forward and lower. You can shake out the leg, and you'll feel all of that energy in that leg. There's a lot of strength building in that first, in that standing leg also. And then you can do the other side. So you bend the left knee, point it out, take your left foot to the ankle, calf, or thigh, and then you can stay there. You could even lift one arm up and have the other hand on the wall. You could lift it up there and then find your balance. Also, when we balance, this helps to focus the mind. So if you've ever tried to balance on something, you realize that, oh wow, I really have to focus on trying to stay balanced, right? Trying to stay in the balance. And so this is another benefit of this posture.
So one thing that really helps me in that posture especially is the breathing behind it. Do you have a special way that you breathe to really focus on that while you're going through the tree pose?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk more about breathing when we do the meditation, but when you're breathing ideally in the postures, if you can, breathe in and out through the nose. And if you want to do a count, like if you want to count in for 3 and out for 3, you can start there, and then you could add on, like you could lengthen your inhalation and exhalation also. So that is tree pose. I also, I think I'm just going to stand this way so you guys can see me this way instead of turning this way, because I think it's easier to see this way. You'll stand about one leg apart, and you'll point, can you see my feet? There we go. You'll point your right toes out. So this would be toward the front of my mat. You point your left toes in, and you'll bend your right knee. And then reach the arms out, which I can't do in this position, but imagine my left arm is extended. Or warrior two. So this is another posture that helps to strengthen the legs, to help us feel grounded. It also helps to open in the hips and the pelvis. And it builds a lot of heat. So if you try to hold this pose for several minutes, you'll start to feel the burn a little bit. And then inhale, straighten the leg. You can switch the feet around, so you'll point your right toes in, your left toes out, and then bend your left knee. And again, I have my wall here, so I'm just extending my arm as much as I can, but both arms ideally are extending out. When we lift the arms in this way, this also helps to lift in the rib cage, and it gives us a little bit more space to take a deeper breath. So we get a deeper breath. The way that we breathe affects our mind and how we feel. So the deeper the breath, the more calm, again, we start to activate that parasympathetic nervous system, our relaxation response, slowing down the heart rate, and we come into balance. Inhale, straighten the leg. Exhale, point your toes forward, and heel to toe the feet forward. So I think that that's a nice practice. If you hold those postures, you could even set a timer if you want, taking deep breaths, maybe set a timer for 1 or 2 minutes. Try to stay in it. If you fall, like in tree pose, you could just come back again. And then just focus on your breathing and holding those poses.
Nice. I really like the warrior three. I've been told that's like a confidence building pose, probably from you.
Probably for me.
Yeah.
Well, actually, interestingly enough, all of the warrior poses are confidence building.
Mm.
They really help, again, strengthen our base. And then when we're supported in our base, so going back to the analogy about a building or the foundation of a building or a house even, when we're supported there, then the rest of the skeletal structure is supported. And then when we're aligned physically, then we can breathe more deeply. And then when we breathe more deeply, then this can affect, again, the parasympathetic nervous system, our relaxation response, and bring us into that place of balance in the body and the mind.
Nice. Yeah, I think we were talking about the other day, it can sometimes be considered condescending to be like, just take a deep breath. But really, I mean, this is
right.
so connected and it's so important. And the amount of times when I've found myself in a really difficult situation, just really bring that back to my breath and knowing that there is actually a reason behind why it's working for me. It's not a shut up and breathe. Like it's a stop your talking.
Well, right. We did talk about that a little bit because it has almost become like that. Like, okay, just breathe. Like, someone's rolling their eyes and telling us to breathe because we're, upset or whatever. But there is, a scientific basis for it. And it really has a lot to do actually with the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve connects from the neck down to the abdomen, and it connects all of our vital organs to one another. And when we take a deep breath, this is so fascinating. I was just reading this the other day. When we take a deep breath, the lungs actually signify to the brain, hey, we're breathing deeply and fully. The brain then signals to the vagus nerve down to the heart to slow down.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
It's amazing, right? It's fascinating. The body is like so amazing. If you can learn to use this tool, this mechanism that you've been given, which is the body, if you can learn to use it to help you, then you can do anything essentially. If your only goal is to just feel better and have a good day, you can do that. You can learn the tools to help you come to a place of balance in your system.
Yeah, it really is. It's sending messages of safety to your body, especially through breath and throughout all these other practices. We forget that like we are on this earth, we're beings of this body, and how can we provide physical safety? And the breath is a way. I mean, when we're feeling these feelings of, you know, fear or panic, there's an evolutionary reason behind that. It's, you know, if we're fearing for our lives, we have to try to get all this oxygen to our blood. I mean, if we can just slow down, take deep breaths, that's sending a signal of safety to the rest of our body. We have the capacity, we have the time to take the slow and deep breath all as well. So.
Right. And we're actually meant to be in that place more than the fight or flight. So I talked a lot about the parasympathetic nervous system, our relaxation response. We're supposed to be in that part of our nervous system most of the time. But because of our modern day world, we have all of these added stressors that put us in the fight or flight sympathetic nervous system, which was meant to help us if we were being attacked by a wild animal.
Right.
It gives us this surge of energy so that we can flee or fight or freeze, whichever survival a mechanism will work in that particular situation. But now we're getting that sympathetic nervous system fight or flight response because of all the work we have to do, because of all the things that are on our plate, because of all the lists that we have to fulfill, right? And so that's why too I said I have mixed feelings about this whole thing, the world slowing down. Like, we kind of need the rest, you know, we need to slow down. We need to, and even if we can't slow down, we need to learn how to breathe so that our body doesn't feel like it's in fear and danger all the time.
Yeah, constantly. Yeah, we always put these things on the back burner. Like with my clients, I'm just like, okay, can we at least set aside some times a day to breathe? And like, I'm just too busy to focus on that. It's like, that's, if you could just focus on that first, like all these other, you make better decisions, all these other things just come into play, you know?
Right. Well, that's the thing too. Like a lot of people have said to me too, well, I don't want to lose my edge, you know, because a lot of people associate that fight or flight response with being productive. And it's not the same thing. It's not. You're actually more productive when you're in a relaxed place than when you're stressed out.
Yeah.
Your productivity will go up.
Exactly. You can't stay there forever. It's depleting. So yeah.
Right. Exactly. So that's another, that's even like another thing to sort of rewire your brain around, that like stress does not equal productive.
Exactly.
And you can be productive and even more productive in a place of more balance in your system and not wearing down your system over time, because that is what happens. If you're stressed all the time, there are stress hormones that are released. We know adrenaline, cortisol, that tears down your body from the inside out. And so it affects your long-term health.
Right. Yes. It depletes your nutrients. The nutrients that are made to, I was just talking about this yesterday, create those feel good hormones in the gut, which is it, you know, with dopamine, serotonin. So eventually stop having the feelings that you want to feel. So if you could just start by at least alleviating your stress through a very simple practice of breath and fear management, then all these other things kind of come into place and you're more balanced. So.
Yeah, and one of the ways we do that, segueing into the meditation, because I want to make sure that we get to that today. Yeah. One of the ways that we can do that is through visualization. Our imagination is actually one of the most powerful tools that we have. In fact, Einstein said that Einstein, probably the most brilliant mind of this last century, at least, said that imagination is more important than knowledge.
Wow.
And it's amazing. So if Einstein was saying that, what do we do with that? Well, we can use imagination to, and we use our imaginations all the time. People are like, oh, I don't have an imagination. I can't visualize. Okay, maybe you have a hard time visualizing something, that's fine. We can work with another tool, but you're doing it anyway. When you think about what you're going to wear in the morning, when you think about what you're going to eat in the morning, you're already imagining like, oh, do I want pancakes or do I want eggs, right? Yeah. I went for pancakes this morning, blueberry, raspberry, delicious. Anyway, I love food too. We could have a whole other conversation about that. But so I'll start you guys today with a very simple visualization. We'll do some breathing to just bring the physical and the mental systems into more balance, and we'll visualize to help balance the first chakra, Muladhara, with our basic needs, and to help settle some of our fear, help us to feel more grounded. And we're not really going to do this today, but another tool is also mantra. And I was reading so mantra are like a word or a phrase that you can use to help you, many times done in repetition, to help you focus the mind. So if you're more of a verbal person, mantra might be something that's that works for you, you know. So I guess I'll give you guys a mantra and a visualization. So if people want to chant, they can in the comfort of their own homes, so they won't be disrupting anyone.
Sounds great. Perfect. Yes.
So come to a comfortable seat. So a lot of people, you know what, I wanted to say one more thing. I started meditating as a kid. Thankfully, my dad had these like tapes that I would listen to. I don't even know, he never even really showed them to me. I just sort of picked them up one day and started listening to them. And then I was like, oh, wow, I feel calm. So I started meditating when I was a kid, and I meditated lying down. So if you want to lie down, I'm not such a stickler about like sitting upright. The only issue is that you might fall asleep if you're really tired. That's one of the reasons why we sit upright. So if you can, sit upright, but if you need to lie down, that's okay too. So come to a comfortable seated or reclined position, and we'll do a very simple pranayama or breathing technique called Pada Dirsasana. So you take your hands underneath your arms. You're crossing your forearms here if you can't see clearly. You close your eyes and breathe in through the nostrils if you can, and feel the belly and the lower back expand. The middle chest and the middle back expand. The upper chest and the upper back expand. If you can, pause and hold the breath. Do not hold the breath if you're pregnant or have any heart conditions. And then exhale through the nostrils from the upper, middle, and lower torso. You can feel the belly pull in and even lift the pelvic floor, engaging what's called the perineum or the perennial body, those muscles in the pelvic floor. And again, inhale, belly and lower back expands. Middle chest and middle back expands. Upper chest and upper back expands. Hold the breath in. Exhale. Release the breath out from the upper, middle, and lower torso. Feel the belly pull in and the pelvic floor lift up. And once more, inhale all the way, lower belly, lower back, middle chest, middle back, upper chest, upper back. Pause, hold the breath in. Exhale, release the breath out. So just a few more times actually like this on your own. And what we're doing here with our hands, you don't have to even press anything, but just our hands in this position gently stimulates nerves between the 5th and 6th ribs. And these nerves connect to our nostrils. And each nostril connects to the opposite side of the brain. You may have noticed that when you're congested, you're breathing through one nostril and the other side is stuffed up. But this actually happens all the time. So every hour and 28 minutes, one side of the brain is dominant and the opposite nostril is dominant. So left nostril, right brain, right nostril, left brain. And every hour and 28 minutes, it switches. So when we have this stimulation with our hands, stimulating those nerves, this tricks the brain into not knowing which side should be dominant. So then the brain goes into neutral. Both sides of the brain go into dominance. This happens naturally in the transition between right and left side dominance with the brain and the nostrils. And we usually go into a daydream when this happens. So we're just trying to recreate this daydream-like state, bringing the mind into a more neutral place so that we can focus it more easily. Now, another thing I wanted to share with you, we slow the breath down, breathing into the different parts starting from the base, because when we breathe 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, so 6 times in 1 minute, this is the perfect ratio of breath to start stimulating the vagus nerve, which then stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, our relaxation response. So if it helps you to count to 5, breathing in for 5, you can hold the breath as long as you'd like, maybe even 5 seconds, but without straining. And then exhaling for 5. This helps to trigger that response in your own body. So again, in for 5, you can hold for 5, and then out for 5. And you'll do about 6 breaths like this. So I know we've done at least 6, maybe longer. Once you've done your 6 breaths, you can release the hands to the thighs, palms up or down. If you're reclined, you can take your hands to your belly or to your heart. And just noticing how you feel for a moment here. Keeping that breath nice and full and long. You can still count the 5 seconds in. Don't retain, don't hold the breath though. And then 5 seconds out. With the eyes closed, we'll move into the visualization part of the practice. Imagining a candy apple red light moving into your toes, your feet, your legs, and the base of your pelvis. Candy apple red mist of light into the toes, the feet, the legs, and the base of your pelvis. This color balances Muladhara, the root chakra. You can even place any kinds of fears or anxieties that you have in this red mist of light to be removed, bringing you back to a place of stability and strength, that strong foundation. There is also a mantra or chant that is balancing for this chakra. That mantra is LAM with an L, LAM. So if you want to chant silently, or chant to yourself rather, or silently, the mantra LAM with the red mist of light, LAM, LAM, LAM. If your mind wanders, come back to the red mist of light and or the mantra LAM. So if your mind starts to race, you start to wander off to something else, just come back, try to focus it again. It's sort of like a little child wandering off. You gently bring the child back to the path, just like the mind. You gently bring the mind back to the point of focus. I'm going to be quiet now just for a few moments so that you can really focus and be here in this meditation. Slowly begin to deepen the breath. Make a fist with your right hand. If you're seated, clasp it with your left. Take this hand formation into your lower belly, just below your navel, and fold forward. This grounds our energy even more into our system so that you can integrate this information, this inspiration that has come up for you, whatever has come up for you really, in the meditation, and integrating it more deeply into your whole system, mind, body, and spirit. And then coming up, press the hands in front of the heart, bowing the chin down toward the chest. We usually end our practice with namaste, which means that divine light within me honors and acknowledges that divine light within you. And in that place, we are one. Namaste.
Thank you. Oh, I
You're
feel
welcome.
so relaxed now.
I could have stayed there for for 20 more minutes, but I was like, we gotta go. See, even when I'm meditating, I've been meditating since I was a kid. I still have those thoughts, right? It doesn't mean that you can't meditate. It just means that Okay, there it is.
Yeah, yeah. Always bringing the thought back to the present moment. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
So,
And also we're on a time constraint, so I
right.
tried to stay aware of that.
True.
So we all have our things, you guys. We all, you know, it may never end. The point of meditation is not to remove your thoughts.
Exactly.
It's to focus the mind and try to create all of these things that I talked about today to stimulate more balance in your system.
Thank you so much, Laura. I learned so much today. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can email me, Laura Butler NYC @gmail.com. It's LAURA, the right way. Laura BUTLER NYC, because I'm in New York City, @gmail.com. So I do have classes on the weekdays in the mornings and the evenings, and so check it out, and I can send you that information if you want to take class with me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll put your website and all your information in below, so anyone who's watching will have it. And thank you so much for your time. And
thank you, Lauren. This was great.
That's great. Have a great day. Stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Namaste.
Namaste.
All right. Have a good one.